Awesome. So this unit is all about chemical reactions. So before we go ahead and jump into the difficult stuff, it's always important to go ahead and start with the easier stuff. So if you open up your Unit 7 Chemical Reactions packet, so it should be uploaded in the folder. I'm going to just put it in the Unit 7 folder, not in the specific weekly folder. So make sure you have this. If you can print it out. Otherwise, just a PDF is always good. So these first two pages are just going to go through the basics of a reaction. So this part is really important to go through just so you know exactly what you're looking at. And when I say reactants or products, you know which side of the equation that is. So a couple important things. First off, this is just the definition of a reaction. So you're definitely going to see that on your quiz, your test, everything like that. This is just a review back from Unit 1 when we talked about the signs of a chemical change occurring. So every single thing we're going to talk about is a chemical change happening. The first part that's really important that I want you to focus in on is the difference between the reactants and the products. A good way to think about it, your reactants react to create your products. So your reactants are always what you start with, and your products are what you're going to be finishing with. Down here below are just a few additional things that you're going to be seeing throughout equations, so you need to make sure you know what those are. So for instance, after every substance, you'll see one of these 4 options, and it's just going to tell you what state that substance is in. This is important because when we start talking about rate of reaction, one of these is going to be the highest rate of reaction, while another will be much lower. So make sure you're looking at this as well. On the second page, it just gives a couple more examples and a little bit of clarification about all the different numbers that you're going to be seeing. So we see here an example of an equation. So for instance, here we see magnesium Mg as a solid is reacting with silver nitrate in the aqueous state. And again, aqueous is just meaning it's just a solid dissolved in water. So that's when you take anything solid and just put it in water, mix it together to produce these two products. So the big thing here is that there's 2 types of numbers you're going to be seeing. You're going to see coefficients and you're going to see subscripts. So subscripts are what we've been working with up to this point. This is what we've been seeing with everything, how we balance our ionic compounds, how we know what's in our covalent compounds, everything like that. So our subscripts are telling us how many of each element are in that compound. But our coefficients are what's going to be new with this unit. So this is telling us how many of that compound there are. So one important clarification, for instance, here, if we're looking at H2, that means there are 2 hydrogen atoms in there, but this coefficient is saying that there are 2 of this whole substance. So if we were to write that out, we would have 1 H2, and then we would have a second H2. And then once we get to the other side, if we ever see a blank and there's no coefficient written, you assume it to be 1. So this would just be O2, like so. So then when you have this product, again, this coefficient is telling you how many of the whole substance. So that would be 2 H2Os all the way at the end. Another important thing, kind of as a preview for what we're going to be doing with this unit, is as we're working through these, whatever we have should always add up. So for instance, beginning to end, it should be the same. So this kind of arrow is almost like a great divide between reactants and products. And so for instance, here we see 1, 2, 3, 4 hydrogens and 2 oxygens. On the other side, we also see 1, 2, 3, 4 hydrogens and 2 oxygens. So this kind of leads us into our conservation of mass. So this is just saying that when you're going from reactants to products, you're not magically creating something or magically making something disappear. It's always going to be the same from beginning to end, which is how we're getting these coefficients. But again, we'll talk a lot about that tomorrow. Some other important things are listed here. So really important stuff. You always want to remember your diatomic elements. So this is probably the most forgotten and probably the most common mistake for this unit. And then down just a little bit further, it's just clarifying when we're going from a worded equation to the actual chemical equation. So this is giving some examples of that. And again, we'll work with that a little bit later this week.